Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a dork living in Portland, Oregon who spent too many years listening to podcasts and not doing anything creative. This is my attempt to rectify that, to create and contribute something where I talk to people about their cultural obsessions and try to give some recommendations of my own. Welcome to Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person.
I've been told I laugh like the Joker from the Suicide Squad.
Oh.
I assume she was flirting with me. I don't know.
Probably.
Anyway.
The animated or the live action version?
Suicide Squad.
It's a movie.
The movie.
I know.
Jared Leto.
You do know there was, before the movie came, they had an animated version that
Jesus.
had...
Nobody cares about that.
You should. It's actually a better film. It's a better film than the movie version.
Sure.
And on that note, hello, Zero Books readers. You are listening to Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person. I am your host, Jeremy, here on a rainy winter. I guess we are. Yeah, we're in the rainy season.
Yeah.
Season. I
Portland.
hear. Yeah, in our scenic basement studio apartment studios here with two guests joining me in recording tonight. Guests / co-hosts, if you will please introduce yourself to the viewing audience.
My name's Jacob Mercy, and my shoes are wet.
And my name is Doug Lain, and I'm the host of the Zero Books podcast most of the time, and a writer and a big-time internet celebrity, basically.
Awesome, and we have nothing but the biggest of big-time internet celebrities here on the program. What can we say?
Do you know Jake Paul?
Yes, I'm going to say. Yeah.
But in a certain sense, don't we all know Jake Paul? You know.
So who's hosting?
I think I'm hosting.
Okay, all right.
I am technically hosting. Sometimes I wish this is where I wish Natasha's here because she's also good to help bounce off of. What I wanted to do was have Doug have you on, and also Jacob, because I do need a co-host. Wanted to start with just to talk about. I would say, since you're the guest, if you could just let the audience, our audience of veritable dozens, just a bit of an introduction to you and your work, and as well as your online output on various social media channels, and yeah, how about that? Let's start with that.
So I'm going to be honest.
Go for it.
The primary thing I do is rant and rave on Facebook. I post on Facebook too much. I get people angry on Facebook. I get angry on Facebook. This is most of what I do. But when I have time for other things like work, I also create a podcast every week, 2 of them now, and for the Zero Books imprint, which is a critical theory imprint out of the UK. So I do a podcast where I interview left-wing philosophers, activists, writers, and others. Sometimes they're not left-wing. Maybe once I'll have someone on who's actually on the right if things go well.
Depending on scheduling.
Right, depending on whether they're signing me on or not. And so I do a podcast. I also create YouTube videos for that imprint, and I'm also a writer. So I've written 3 novels and short stories, and I'm a science fiction writer.
So science fiction, YouTube, and Facebook.
Yeah, those are the big things.
So
and I'm a father of 4.
Okay. So those would be at least 3 areas that are noted for mature, civilized conversation.
Well, wait. What about philosophy, man? How about that? I'll throw that in as a moderating influence to give me a hint of. And also, I've got gray in my beard.
Yeah, no. I've seen some of your YouTube videos, and you seem like you are very thoughtful and very intelligent, and it really contrasts with most of the recommendations I get, which is basically just people screaming at each other for 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. YouTube is so eclectic. You can go to YouTube and just go down this rabbit hole of crap very easily. I mean, all sorts of crap. But unfortunately for me, because I have been watching The Enemy, I get a lot of recommendations for like social justice warrior fails and that kind of stuff. I'm not subscribed to any of that, but I get recommended that all the time. But then you can also find like 2-hour lectures of from Yale or wherever you want. Anything you want is on YouTube. It's amazing.
Oh, I was going to say, that's one of the things that I did want to talk about both being let's just say being a lefty podcaster in the foul year of our Lord 2018 or so, but also in that, but also the first, like I said, the almost like, I don't know, like platform difference where a lot of like really right wing alt right shitheads somehow like gravitated toward YouTube, whereas like lefty folks went more towards podcasts. The only kicker is that one has the outsizes the circulation of the other by about 2 orders of magnitude, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I think that's even an underestimate. I mean, because what really are just a few like comedians who are doing shows,
right?
What, Joe Rogan, Mark Maron, Bill Burr has one, and then who's big in podcasting? NPR, right? There's Serial was a big podcast, I guess.
Yeah, but people, it's like it's like people who had built a name in other media or in other formats or other areas coming to this, this kind of our little like, weekly book on tape conversation media.
Right. So in like my own podcast, which has grown a lot in the last year, actually, since Trump was elected, it's gotten a lot more. We're all drinking beer here.
Right. Funny how that happens.
So, yeah, it's gotten a lot more listeners. But that gets around 5,000 downloads a week, which is not bad. It's, I was podcasting for 6-7 years at like 1,000 downloads a week. And, not happy that it wasn't growing, but not horribly upset at that number either. A good YouTube video will get, my YouTube video gets 5,000 views, and I'm okay with that. I'm happy, but that's millions. So that's what you are aiming at when you have success on YouTube. So it's just not even I don't even know if it's a fair comparison. The question is, for me, is like, first of all, I don't know if that many left-wing podcasts really exist. They come and go. Like Chapo is this unique phenomenon. I'm not exactly sure what explains it. They're funny.
Right place, right time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But yes, the right place, right time. They're in New York. They're connected tangentially to the entertainment industry.
More media. I think problem because I think
because I've talked to Amber. I know Amber.
Yeah,
we're Facebook friends. She's been on my podcast.
That's one. I think that's one of her appearance on one of your old Diet Soaps.
Amber Ali Frost, thank you for coming on to Diet Soap.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I thought we'd start with your essay for Jacobin, Bro Bash, which is the essay that caused an uproar on Twitter, the essay that brought down a mix of misreadings and lies on your head.
Confused? You won't be on tonight's episode of Diet Soap.
Yeah. That was the name of the podcast I did before I started working for Zero Books.
Right,
so
yeah.
I just sort of switched it
over.
I
think, listening to, finding her through, I don't know, whatever, but her appearance on one of your old show from 3 or 4 years ago or so. I think it was the first one I heard, and then started like listening from there. But no, I think what with them was just right, like I said, right place, right time. More importantly, because Gawker got shuttered, they filled the gap that Gawker used to serve. The fact that they were also friends and all stuck in Brooklyn and shared a lot of the same. Alex Perrine, Gawker's old editor-in-chief, was just on Chapo like a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
All that snark and irony had to go somewhere.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but also it's not just snark and irony. It is
a left sensibility.
A left sensibility targeting very self-satisfied and self-important, like stuffed shirt, like Manhattanite professional media people.
Okay.
And I think, and Gawker did that a lot. It's one of the reasons why I liked Gawker. It's similar to, like, if you've ever read the AV Club, like, especially, before they got bought out, like Shaun O'Neill, who eventually became one of the Newswire editor, perfect sense of, like, perfectly directed snark at people who deserved it. and I think Gawker did a lot of that too. But the thing is, Gawker got taken down, and I think Chapo took the, took up the, filled the spot of someone attacking all these people, these like really, self-important media people, like I said, six-figure media professionals who weren't really called on any of this stuff, and I think they came in and filled the right spot, and were, they filled the gap. I heard about them because I heard that 2 years ago, somebody posted that, hey, there's this smart ass snarky podcast that is directly ripping into Rouse Douthat. Uh-huh. Those of you who don't know, Rouse Douthat is kind of the token conservative that the New York Times hired after they booted. Was it Bill Kristol? I think they finally kicked Bill Kristol off of the op-ed staff, and they hired Ross Douthat on there for some, because they needed a safe token conservative. And I had heard that Chapo was just ripping into both his stuff as also his own. Ross Douthat wrote a book, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is perfect. I started listening from them. This is like during the 2016 campaign, and that was personally where I got it from. I think because they were part of the Brooklyn media ecosphere, they got coverage from other places. Like there was a couple, like other people, like there was a write up in Paste, there was a write up in like the New Yorker, there was a write up in like
the AV Club. Yeah,
the AV Club.
Okay.
Where it was like a lot of word of mouth stuff, and more people listening. Like I said, their own particular the particular alchemy of the hosts, like a very, very singular. It wasn't just kind of just ripping into somebody. It was ripping into somebody, but thanks to certain hosts, they had a far, far deeper bench of theory and history than just snarky internet dudes.
Right. They're smart.
Right.
Yeah. So what happened was they got good publicity. They ended up in the New Yorker at one point.
Yes.
And because of their connections in Brooklyn, they were then able to use these networks to get major, like almost mainstream, including eventually the New Yorker, that's mainstream, reports out there, and that just made them really big.
Right. I think it was entirely like it was.
It's kind of what happened to Angela Nagle's book,
right?
Because the reason that got successful is because it got covered by big mainstream publications early.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and she also
New Republic.
And she also, for those of you who don't know, Doug's imprint published Angela Nagle's Kill All Normies in, when did that actually, was it June? When did that actually hit?
It actually hit like February.
Okay.
Last year.
Because Angela did the podcast circuit, because she was on Chapo. She did the podcast circuit in like mid-late 2016, because the ideas were formulating, and that's where I first heard about it. And they said, oh yeah, there's this book coming out on the same imprint. Chapo also did very early on, they did an entire a book club episode on Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism, published by you guys at Zero Books.
Right.
And
I came in after Mark left.
Okay.
So Mark and Tariq and the whole old crew at Zero Books left in 2014. And at that point, I was just a guy who knew a guy who had sent a book to Zero Books because it was a hip thing and had an acceptance. And I was a writer and a podcaster. And he said, hey, you should submit to them. And so I sent them a proposal, and they accepted it. And then I got an email when they all left, and it said, we're all leaving. It was from Tariq. Tariq is how people say it.
Yeah.
You know him, but I say Tariq. But we don't get along, but not because of any real reason, except I came in and filled his shoes. So So anyway, he sent me an email saying, hey, we're leaving, and I wrote back, and he eventually wrote back to me. But what I wrote back to him was, should I leave too? Should I pull my book? What's going on? What is the reason for this happening? And the reason for it happening was because he and the owner of John Hunt Publishing, whose name is John Hunt, didn't get along.
That'll happen.
Yeah. So, I can understand it's not actually easy to work for a critical theory imprint out of a company that runs 38 other imprints, a lot of them being like New Age or Christian, or there's some fiction lines, but they're just not, none of them are particularly close. There's one that's pretty close, but none of them are very close to Zero Books. So Zero Books was a weird imprint for this big company. and it's now the most successful imprint for the whole company.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah, and I think it was when I inherited it. It was already very successful. And Mark Fisher was a big part of that. But anyway, they left, and then there was a whole battle about they wanted to take the name with them, and they couldn't because John Hunt owned it. And this guy Dave Blacker said to me, "Hey, you should apply for this job." And I said, "Okay, I will." And then they said, "We don't want to hire you for the job, but we'll hire you as a reader. We've got this other guy, Steve Nash, who we're going to hire to be the editor." He lasted 3 days and then quit because he's getting so much pressure from the old Zero crew that it was wrong to take the job, that he quit because he was in England and getting a lot of pressure. So they said, "Well, would you like it?" Now I'm working in a phone room at Comcast at the time, or actually no, I'm working in a phone room in the Oregon Symphony at the time. And anyway, so I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take it." And so I took the job and ran with it, and it's been very successful since then. But so those are the real life circumstances around me taking the Zero Books job. I was an author. They all left in a huff because they didn't get along with the main guy. I took it over, and I run things differently than they did, but not tremendously differently. The main difference is I didn't come from an Ivy League school. I think so. I don't fight as much as they did.
And you're not English.
Yeah, I'm not English.
Gotcha.
And I'm over here.
Right.
And I do a podcast.
There's that.
Those are all things that are different. This is the thing. You have a couple drinks and then go on a podcast and talk about business. I'm not sure exactly a smart move, but anyway, yeah.
It's well, we're not exactly broadcasting live to the world. This shit is
But yeah. So that's the Zero Books story, and then after that, I mean, the biggest hit we had after I took over was Angela Nagle's book. Mm-hmm. We published a number of really good books as well. Babbling Corpse would be one, and
I'm trying to think of the other ones. Lee Phillips one about
Lee Phillips. Yeah, Lee Phillips was one that they had purchased and then was published in when we took over. But like that, but there have been a number of good books. The Writing on the Wall is one that last year I'm actually the most proud of, which is an Anselm Jappe. He's French, so I always get the name wrong. But he's the first biographer of Guy Debord. And he wrote this great book for well, basically it's a collection of his essays translated into English, and we published it. And I think it's the most important book we published last year.
Oh,
so but it's sold, a couple, 500, 600 copies, something like that. Nothing like Angela Nagle's book.
What would you say the mission statement of Zero Books is?
Well, there was the manifesto that the old crew wrote, and we held on to it for a couple of years. We've written our own now, and I can't remember it exactly, but it basically boils down to that we live in a culture in which we're encouraged to like or swipe to the right or to
like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe, but we're not encouraged to think, and that this is an imprint that is trying to work against that trend, because if we're going to have there's a need for radical change, and you're not going to get to radical change through going with your gut instincts and just automatically responding to things. The manifesto was better than that, but that's the core of what we're about.
I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think it's also something that really resonates with me, because one of the things that I've seen people talking about when they talk about, for example, debating the right online, is this issue of there are a lot of things in the world that seem like common sense but aren't actually necessarily true. And a lot of those things are, unfortunately, arguments on the right. There's a lot of ways to dumb things down, and there's a lot of ways to make reductive arguments that are factually incorrect, but it's not necessarily simple to demonstrate that in a pithy one-liner that you do in the middle of Google Hangouts where you're screaming at somebody.
Mm. Yeah. Can you give me an example of a common sense point of view that needs to be taken apart? I'm putting you on the spot. If you can, that's okay.
Off the top of my head,
you can't go from. How about let's take a big one. You can't suddenly decide that you're a girl. How about that?
Well, I mean that's a classic.
That doesn't happen. People don't suddenly decide that.
Well, I know, but I guess it's a in inverted commas common sense argument. It's a common, I don't know, the trope, like almost like a thing thrown out in bad faith.
Right.
From these assholes of like, wait, this bullshit construction as if, treated as if that is, people sincerely do that one day. It's just like wake up and.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually reminding me of a really good example, which is that there's this YouTube video where Ben Shapiro totally destroys this SJW girl at a college campus. And the way he does this is he says, oh, well, you can change your gender, right? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, why don't you just say you're 67? And she's like, what? Because this is obviously a weird and insane argument. But the thing about that is, age is a social construct. Years are an arbitrary human construction. Yeah. Jewish people keep a different calendar. The Chinese keep a different calendar. The Mayans kept a different calendar.
The Russians kept a different calendar.
So let's think this through. Why can't you just say I'm 67? There are a couple reasons why. One is that age matters when it comes to what kinds of benefits you get from the government. Okay, so we are very strict about it for that reason. But other than that, I can't think of a reason. The thing is, go ahead.
I have another reason. Renting a car, you cannot do that unless you are 25.
Okay, but right, all right. So,
these are all.
You have to say
reasons.
your actual age when you can't just say you're 18. You can't just say you're 21. You can't just say you're 25, and you can't just say you're 65.
Sure.
So there are some reasons, but other than that, like, what are the cultural signifiers? What is constructed around age, and how does it? It's not static. I mean, being 47, I'm 47 now, in 2018, is not the same as being 47 in 1988.
Yes.
And what marks you as 47 now is totally different than what marked you as 47 then. So it's a moving target. Age is just a very different kind of thing than gender, which also changes over time, but not the same way.
Yeah, and also adulthood. And what is considered to be an age appropriate for? Well, there you go, age appropriate.
Well, there's no such thing as age appropriate anymore either.
This is exactly what I was hoping to illustrate, which is that's a really good pithy one-liner to throw off.
Right.
But what he's trying to do is he's trying to take a shortcut and say that there are fundamental laws that basically correspond with our universe, and that gender is one of them. And I think one way you could half make that argument is that biological sex is very strict, but that's not the discussion that's being had. So he's attempting to change the terms of the discussion.
Right. No,
and the thing that we just talked about was all cool, but you're not going to be able to do that when you're standing in the back of an auditorium asking a question. And it's also really hard to do when you're having a debate with somebody online.
Yeah, I mean, you could try to do it from the back of the room, and if you're assertive enough, and you might get somewhere, but probably not very far.
No, yeah.
But the point is, the other thing about his question is that there's a truth to it that is, I think, actually true, which is that gender is not completely arbitrary. Like these things, gender is the way we negotiate the fact of sex in the world. But most of the time what we're talking about are people who have body dysphoria and who feel that they would be more able to live. And it's not just, they'd be happier, but they'd be able to cope better if they change their appearance and some parts of their physicality to match what they feel like they should be. Yeah. And I don't think anyone quite understands why it happens. I mean, I think it's debated. The science isn't really in. Psychology is not a very solid science. It's not like physics. It's messy. So of course it's going to be debated as to why this is happening. But it happens to people, and those people deserve respect.
Right.
No, bro. There's just like a dude and a girl. It's like really simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is like at some point it is the indoctrinaire demand of clear and distinct boundaries, and not being able to handle the fact that this stuff's kind of messy, and that these people still need support and protection and access to services free of charge, Yeah, that it just kind of like, at some point that's just several steps way too far for them.
That's another good example, actually, now that you mention it, which is this idea that, well, if we lower taxes for everybody and maybe even throw people $100 here and there in a rebate, that's great. That's great. It will benefit poor people. Poor people will love that, and there will be no negative downsides. Or, we're going to just raise taxes by, a couple percent. Well, poor people can afford that. It's not that big a deal. Well, just the idea of the value of $1 being different to somebody who makes minimum wage compared to, say, Mark Zuckerberg is, a flat tax is a perfect example, one of those common sense solutions. Or, and there's a million of them once you get started.
Yeah.
And some of them are really complicated. Like, I was watching a YouTube video by a leftist by the name of ShaunJen. I don't know if you're familiar.
No, not that one.
And ShaunJen had a half-hour piece, I think it was, explaining why the race realism issue is complicated.
Hello everyone. Today I'd like to take a look at a video from a YouTuber by the name of Roaming Millennial entitled People of Color, You Are Not Oppressed.
Because one of the things that race realists will bring up to explain why they're technically not racist is that they argue that Asian people have a higher IQ in the United States.
Yeah.
And so Shaun of this ShaunJen YouTube channel put up a half-hour video explaining why there's a very strong, reasonable argument for why that is the case that doesn't depend on genetics.
Okay, well, first of all, yeah, sure, there's lots of arguments as to why IQ is the way it is in the world. And there, some of these things are true. Some studies have been done, and in various parts of the world, people can be divided up by IQ. The averages are different in different ethnicities. That's just a kind of a fact. How you interpret it makes all the difference. But, look, anti-Semitism is racism, right? But it's a peculiar kind.
Yeah.
And the Jews are not thought of as being dumb. So you can be perfectly racist and say that some people are smart.
Right.
Smart,
But
the whites are saying, here's what the whites say.
Yeah.
It's Goldilocks, right? Oh, this bowl is too cold. This bowl is too hot. But the white race is just right in the middle. And that's what the white nationalists say all the time. It's like, 100 IQ is the average for whites. It's weird how it's a round number like that.
Yeah,
it's also weird how that number was developed by white people. I don't know.
And also it doesn't take into effect the Flynn effect. Whereas,
now the average IQ is like 106.
Yeah, because over time
it's gone up.
Yeah, over time it's gone up thanks to funny how that works. But it gets into one of the other topics that I did want to talk about. It was just
there's no one worse, by the way, than these IQ guys. It's always been the case. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when trolling meant there's a guy named Kibbo, who was the first internet troll.
Kibo?
Kibbo, Kibo.
Yeah, okay.
James Perry, Kibbo.
I just remember I remember you're bringing back using that shit.
Yes, just using that. He was
kind of like Kibo, but yeah.
Okay, maybe it's Kibbo. I always pronounce things wrong.
Well, I mean, did either of you meet him?
I interviewed him by email for my zine, which was called Diet Soap back in 1993.
I'm glad I asked that question.
Rest in peace, Fact Sheet 5.
Yeah, right.
What is happening?
So anyway,
it's 90s zine culture.
Yeah. So I talked to Kibbo, and his favorite thing to do was to go to the Mensa Usenet group and troll them and ask questions, misspell things and ask questions and say things like, I studied hard so I can be a genius like you, just to get them to say, IQ is fixed, blah, blah, blah. But, so Mensa people are the worst, just the worst. Being smart is one thing. Having a high IQ is one thing. Being part of a club of high IQ people,
where that is the sole,
totally different thing.
That is the sole single identifying factor.
Basically.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. A club for people, and I a long, God, 10 plus years ago, I actually dated somebody who was in and out of like the local Mensa club, and would talk about the people that she'd meet in there. And it was like, it was where having a particular, because they had a high intelligence stat that somehow became their,
it was everything.
That was their favorite. Just that high stat number. Okay, you have an 18/99 in intelligence. That is like your main defining feature and identity that you grab onto, and
Yeah. Anyway, but you find that all the time on the alt-right. People who are talking. I think Vox Day loves to talk about his IQ.
Sure.
So, anyway, which to me tells you everything about the guy. Not that he has a high IQ, but that he loves to talk about it.
Right. And
Well, so it sounds like you've got a real challenge for yourself on your hands if that's the purpose of Zero Books.
Yeah, it's true. And the thing about it is I don't even concern myself with the kinds of things you're talking about. Like, I don't care that there are right-wingers out there who are oversimplifying things and making these specious arguments. I mean, I do care to an extent because I want to take them apart when I can.
And you're competing with them for...
And I do compete with them. But I don't pick everyone. Like, I wouldn't go after Ben Shapiro because he's just too low-hanging fruit. I like Jordan Peterson because he comes off... Well, first of all, I do a philosophy podcast, or that's what it was for a while when it was Diet Soap. And he kind of comes off like a philosopher. He's not. He's a psychologist. But I like to go after guys who seem like they're the highbrow version of this stuff.
Hello, lobsters. Normies. Zero Books readers. I want to comment on a viral YouTube video. Jordan Peterson has recently gone viral again. His Channel 4 interview was so poorly handled by Cathy Newman that the YouTube video of it got over 4 million views. The primary reason the video blew up is because Cathy Newman misrepresented Peterson's views in real time.
Yeah, Peterson. Let's talk about Peterson a second, because it's kind of a thing where he is very of the moment, and it's kind of one of those things where, one of many just asshole professors who, at some point, just because he took whatever stance he did at in Toronto, University of Toronto, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And, somehow his, because he didn't like trans folks,
well, that's really,
and that blew up. And
see, this is the thing about Peterson. This is why he's doing so well, is because I don't think he's insincere. I don't think he's purposely making specious arguments. If you look at what he says about the Canadian human rights law, it's debatable, right? It's not clear cut. It's the truth is all this stuff is going to probably be figured out in the courts. Eventually, but probably not that quickly, because the things that he's raising about the gender equality additions to the human rights bill aren't going to be brought up very often. No one's really going to take anyone to court over not using a non-binary pronoun. That's going to happen when? Every 10 years? How often is that going to happen? Not very often. So, but it will have to be worked out in the courts. And he may be right that the law is poorly written. He may be right about that. So that's it. That's why he has the fact that he may be right about that, and the response from the left has been hysterical, is why he's been able to just bring in the most obvious sort of reactionary, religious, Jungian stuff and sell it. Is because he has this pedigree of basically being able to sweep aside liberals online and on television and in print, and seem more sincere and honest and less hypocritical than some of his opponents are. He comes off that way again and again, like this Cathy Newman interview is an example.
Yeah, which happened that was this month, right?
Yeah.
He would background for that. He was wound up in the UK on Channel 4.
Right.
Yeah, it was an interview on Channel 4 with Cathy Newman, which just went. It's like, it was kind of a thing where she had him on and just did. There are ways to handle assholes like this, and the ways that not to, that really kind of defeat your own purpose and enhance theirs. And she kind of took the wrong way to do it, wasn't it?
Yeah, you would say to me something like, she took the wrong way to do it, and it'd be as if my response to you was, so you're saying she's a. Is that what you're saying? I mean, it was that.
So you're saying that women can't debate men? Is that what you're implying?
Sorry, I used a bad word, but it was almost that. It was almost like that. It was this really hyperbolic misrepresentation of what he is saying. What he was saying could be picked apart, but she didn't do that. She would be like, "So you're saying you like to eat babies?" That's basically how she responded to him, and it just let him walk all over her. He just made complete hay out of that. And the thing is, not because he's a vicious asshole. But because when you do that in real time with someone who can think, they're going to do that to you. They're going to wipe the floor with you. And not viciously or anything either. But there are lots of really good arguments against Peterson, because Peterson's a reactionary. I mean, he's not a fascist, but he's honest to God a reactionary.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We'll answer your question, okay? I've studied Nazism for a very long time. It's been 4 decades, and I understand it very well. And I can tell you that there's some awful people lurking in the corners, and they're ready to come out.
Hello, Zero Books readers. This video will answer the question, how did political correctness cause fascism? In fact, let's get the answer to that question out of the way right off the bat. Just how did political correctness cause fascism? Well, it didn't.
Da 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 da. Now that we have lost the audience, and now only my friends are watching, I would like to show my special. Oh, look. Oh, look at this. Oh, it's very beautiful, this beautiful girl.
And so he, you know, and a lot of what he says about deeper issues like postmodernism and Marxism and meaning and truth and all of these things are deeply conflicted.
That you bring up. Did you read Suja Hater's thing about talking about just ripping it about his idea, you know, getting trying to attack this idea of postmodern cultural Marxists as and not really understanding the fact that like postmodernists and both the actual cultural Marxists and Marxists themselves are kind of like, you know, what the hell are you talking about, dude? That, you know, such a thing couldn't exist. It's like, you know, they're kind of like almost like diametrically opposed.
Right. Well, there's a bunch of reasons why he gets away with it. And the major reason he gets away with it is because people who like Judith Butler will call themselves Marxists. And not that Judith Butler's bad, but she's not a Marxist. And people who like her aren't Marxists. They haven't read Marx. They don't care about Marx. But lots of people call themselves Marxists when what they really mean is, I hate capitalism. I have this sort of weak and anti-capitalist stance.
Anti-capitalism, but not Marxist.
Right. So, but Marx gets thrown around. It's a buzzword now rather than an actual referent to anything. So that's one, and that's not just with Peterson. That's across the board. We do that. So he gets to say Marxist when he means anyone who wants radical change in society. He can call them Marxist. And they call themselves Marxists half the time. Some of the times, if they're anarchists, they don't. But he will call anarchists Marxists, too. And it happened to me when I was an anarchist. I would get called Marxist all the time. So,
what was that? Real quick, for the viewing audience, can you do a quick 30-second distinction between anarchist Marxists? You know, let us define our terms. Myself, as a very as new to a lot of this stuff, am not the best at distinguishing this stuff. So I shall let you, the elder member of more lefty stuff, and the elder podcaster, opine if possible.
So anarchists believe that the major problem in society is hierarchical power, and they want for people to be treated as equals. And they want to destroy institutions that basically create inequality in the world. What do you think of that?
Hell yeah. That sounds good. I'm an anarchist now.
Yeah, right, exactly. The problem with anarchists is that where they point to as the source of hierarchical authority, and I would also go so far to say that hierarchical authority occurs on different registers. Like there's the kind of hierarchical authority you suffer under when you are a classical musician being told when to play by a conductor. And there's a kind of hierarchical authority that you suffer under when you're an employee working for minimum wage at a job that you can barely get by on, and you're struggling to survive. And those are completely different kinds of hierarchical authority. Hierarchical authority that is based on maybe not exactly mutual consent, but based on a certain level of freedom and working it out on a playing field that's mostly equal, materially equal, let's say, is different than hierarchical authority, where basically if you don't listen to me, you're going to starve or die or get shot. I mean, it's just totally different things. But anyway, anarchists think that hierarchical authority is the main problem. Marxists think that hierarchical authority is far too general a category, that you have to look at the differences between kinds of authority throughout history, and that there's been such a thing developed called capitalism, and that we have to look at how it works and change the mode of production, they'll say, the way that we produce things together collectively, the institutions around the economy and politics. Both.
Manufacturing and shipping and all that stuff. And
yeah, manufacturing, shipping.
Day jobs. Yeah.
Work. Primarily work, reproductive work, meaning not reproducing human beings, although that may be part of it, but reproducing the material world, the structures we live in, the clothes we wear, everything.
Making and reinforcing.
Yeah. And the main thing for Marx was that the commodity form itself, this idea that we produce things for exchange in the market, was a major problem. So the difference between anarchists and Marxists, from my perspective, is that anarchists are far more likely to take capitalism as it is, as the natural world, and think that occasionally what happens is they think if everyone could just be their own entrepreneur, then we'd have a free society. That's a kind of anarchism that exists. You'll never find a Marxist who says that kind of thing.
Right.
Now, the problem with Marxists is that they often think it's all about power, about state power, about politics, taking the control of the government and the state. And that is, the history of the 20th century is making the mistake about not going deep enough into changing the mode of production. But yeah, so that's it. That's my quick little thumbnail of the difference between anarchists and Marxists. The point is that Marx was a writer and a critic and a thinker, and that if you want to know what a Marxist is, there's a whole slew of books to read, but if you want to know what Marx thought, you read what Marx wrote. And so what I want, if I ever talk to Jordan Peterson, and we're working out of time to talk, what I want to talk to him about is not Marxism, but Marx. And just saying, look, you can go after Marxists all you want, but if you go after Marx, you're going after a thinker who's more part of the Enlightenment tradition that you're supposedly defending as a classical liberal than Nietzsche by a long shot, or Jung, who's your big hero.
Right.
Both of them are critics of modernity in a way that Marx was not.
Yeah.
So anyway, but
well, Nietzsche also showed up was active 30-odd years later too. So
right. Well, I think Nietzsche started writing just before Marx died. So I think I read that today, but I'm not sure. But anyway, yes, no. I mean, they're not. The Marx was unaware of Nietzsche. Nietzsche probably never read Marx.
Well, one was in Germany, the other one in England by that point.
Huh?
One of them by that. Well,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. But the point is that
we need Varn here.
Varn knows everything. He's like
previous guest of the show, Derick Varn. Click back to our previous episode, Big Daddy Varn's Baby Leftist Primer, named by Jacob here.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Oh, so yeah,
let's see. Probably join the DSA, but don't take it seriously because it's not a party. Let's see. Listen to Chapo Trap House, but don't take it seriously because it's not political. Read Jacobin magazine, but don't take it seriously because it's not good. Let's see. This is a harder topic than you think because there's so many mistakes a baby leftist can make. Right. The first one is generally thinking your moral convictions matter at all, which is a strange thing to say, because I actually am a defender of leftists having moral convictions, but the idea that just because you have them, that other people agree with them, even if they're ostensibly on the left or opposed to Trump or whatever, is kind of a really, really bad way to start out.
Anyway, sorry.
So the point is just that it's a big task, and I'm going to go back to what you said. I have a big task ahead of me to try to get people interested in these kind of fine details, or to read a big, read Capital. It's a big, thick book, and
well, I mean, getting people to read a book these days is a bit of a struggle. It seems like.
Well, it depends on what people, but yeah, that's true. I think people who are committed, I think people who are committed to thinking about things and writing about things on the left should read Capital. I mean, I know a lot of writers. So those people who write from a supposedly radical perspective should read Capital. It's just, even if they don't end up agreeing with it, but if you haven't read Capital and you call yourself a Marxist, which I still don't, I call myself a wannabe Marxist because I haven't read Capital Volume 2 and 3, and I haven't read a lot of stuff. Or 4, right.
I have I only own Capital Illustrated, the graphic illustrated.
I read that.
It's good stuff. It's thank you, Haymarket.
It's fun. But anyway, it's a really important critique that Marx makes, and the main thing to tell people who might be working class and like Jordan Peterson or even just disaffected middle class people is that Marx was not really about what you think about Marx is like he was the same as Lenin. Marx was about critiquing the economy and trying to perfect society, trying to give human beings the ability to change, figure out a science of their own social life, and give people the power to change their own social conditions. And he was an Enlightenment thinker and incredibly rational, and not at all what Jordan Peterson talks about when he talks about neo-Marxist postmodernists who want to just be complete relatives and just let their feelings dictate everything and blah blah blah.
Yeah, this was the point of like Shooter Hater's recent bit, which I'll link to in the notes, talking about how it is as if Peterson's knowledge of inverted commas cultural Marxists came from like maybe scanning a Wikipedia entry and never actually reading any of this stuff.
This has been really interesting for me because I actually don't know anything about Jordan Peterson. I've heard him talked about a lot, and I'm going to get everybody really excited by drawing a comparison between Jordan Peterson and actually Marx, I think, which is that what I see in the modern era, and the reason I'm so familiar with Jordan Peterson, despite the fact that I've never actually sat down to watch one of his videos or read any of his material, is that I am exposed to him through hearsay and secondhand, which is, I think, how a lot of people are actually exposed to Marx. I think there's a lot of people who talk about Marx all the time who have only ever heard about it, and I think that's really interesting because it seems like we have what you might almost call intellectual artillery. You have people who go out and either come up with ideas or find new ways of interpreting things or finding new ways of reframing old concepts, and that these are taken up by people and embraced and basically used to have what you might describe as lower order discussions, where you have somebody who isn't necessarily well versed in all of the theory but who has beliefs and passions that they want to express, and this gives them the language to describe it.
Yeah, this brings us back. Okay, two things. The first thing that came to mind when you're talking was
how dare you make that comparison?
No, not at all. Yeah. Was the short story "The Machine Stops" by which was written like in 1900, and it's about people who live underground, but it's basically taken up lately as like, wow, oh my God, this guy wrote, I think it was Forrester who wrote this short story that's basically predicting the internet, and it's like about this lady who has never read a primary document, never read or never listened to real music, but just listens to recordings, reads the criticism of the criticism of the criticism. So we're definitely like that in this culture because there's so much generated content that's commenting on content, which is what this conversation has been, by the way.
Well, you don't really have a lot of choice all the time.
Yeah, gloss upon gloss upon gloss, as if we were Renaissance.
Let me give you my hot take on that guy's hot take.
Yeah.
So it's a big task to try to say, sit down, think, read, take a moment. And I work in a medium which is the exact opposite of that. So that's, not only books aren't the opposite of that, but I also do the podcasting and the and the
YouTube is real time video, which means the opposite of that.
I think part of that is that books offer an opportunity to present information in a way that people can pull from. And I've had a lot of conversations where people say, "Oh, we're having a discussion about a particular topic." Usually with me it's online because that's
how we exist nowadays.
Conversations I'm usually having, but they'll say, "Oh, have you read Angela Nagle's book?"
Right.
And it's sort of a shorthand for bringing in the issues that she mentions or some of the things that happened in the period of time she covers.
Right. So, and when they ask you, "Have you read Angela Nagle's book?" they may not have read it themselves.
Right.
Right. That's really interesting.
Well, I remember one of the. I think it was actually. I think Matt Taibbi talked about, of all people. Matt Taibbi talked about in his reviewing the recent Michael Wolff Fire and Fury book, the fact that the humor was somebody was talking about the fact that because this was an actual book, which means it is not real time. You actually it requires dedicated time to kind of sit and consume and think and reflect, rather than just kind of like 800 word hot take fired back before lunch. That it's kind of it both hit harder and it broke through that a lot of other things didn't.
Right. Yeah, I've read about 2/3 of that. No,
really?
one third of that book.
I was say, if you want, I have an EPUB of if you want.
Yeah, so I got a copy of that.
I didn't have the energy.
No,
I mean, it sounded interesting, but the problem is I don't know which parts I can trust. And I don't think I have the time. I mean, I have time to read the book. I don't have time to...
Look, I believe the Gorilla story. The Gorilla Channel story. I actually thought that was true for 10 minutes. I mean, so that's how low my estimation is of Trump.
Yeah, the difference, what is it? When it comes down between truth and the legend, print the legend, to quote everyone from Liberty Valance to Steve Coogan.
But I agree with John Ford. When you have to choose between the truth and the legend, print the legend.
Anyway, let's on that note, let us take a quick break because I need to use the restroom real quick, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
What's something that you wouldn't want the police to know?
It's corollary.
What
is something you wouldn't want the Portland police to know? How about that?
So many different things. I never did pay that jaywalking ticket from 1992.
They issued jaywalking tickets in Portland in 1992.
Yeah.
Wow. We could do we could do an entire 8-episode series just talking about 90s Portland. But
yeah. So, how old are you, Jeremy?
I turned 41 last summer.
Okay, great. So we're practically the same age. Only I'm 6 years older. But yeah, the 90s in Portland were a fun time. Do you think nerd culture can handle real left politics? I mean, or politics at all? Really? I mean, we have the things that are in nerd culture on politics.
Mm.
What do we got? We got, on the extremes, we have, I guess maybe, Vox Day.
Sargon of Akkad.
No, he's not really nerd culture, is he?
He covers some of that.
Does he do comic books and movies and stuff like that?
There are people
only
who
reactionary takes on it, I guess. But
he did a Star Wars review, and there's a guy by the name of, I think, Diversity in Comics who's starting to do YouTube stuff. Actually, my boss just linked me to an article is called #ComicsGate, which I am not looking forward to reading.
Oh dear.
And it's apparently about the rising culture war in that.
See, this is the thing. I feel like nerd culture, when you start to do politics and nerd culture, you get a culture war. You don't get actual, thoughtful, you don't even get, right-wingers who are thoughtful. You just get horrid, trolling, call-out culture war around nerd culture.
Isn't that just politics now?
In a sense, and unfortunately, I think what I was much more keen to talk about was more criticizing the.
I just want to say one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I say that as someone who's written a science fiction novel and who's in that whole culture and does use nerd references all the time to try to communicate political points. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's really tough.
Right.
But anyway, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, but I think my sliver or take or approach or vector was more examining. I think I always want to say just the unquestioning hyper consumption. That kind of now stands in for a lot of what is described as nerd culture, because effectively, I mean, what we call nerd culture is effectively just nerd genre entertainment that won the battle and subsumed all of pop culture about 10 years ago. Once like I said, at the time that Chris Hardwick showed up and the time that Walking Dead showed up, started. So like 08, 09, it was about the time when most of the companies, the huge media megacorps realized, hey, wait a minute, if we if we, instead of stop making fun of the nerds, we realize that nerdy folks have the most predictably monetizable consumption habits and interests possible. Let's just start, let's tune the culture industries to start churning out familiar logos, aiming at them now, and then, make even more money and kind of so that's, one reason, that's when you get sci-fi and superhero shit that took over everything.
I'm looking at your collection of Star Wars figurines right now.
Yeah. And this is what happens when you, this is what happened. Like I said, yeah, to quote the great thinker Britney Spears, I'm not that innocent of it. There's a reason why I was born and raised on Star Wars and space Legos and went on to get an aerospace engineering degree.
Yeah, I understand. No, okay. What about, so you said a couple of things I want to just pick apart a little bit. So,
him or me?
He did.
Okay.
Nerd culture.
Go for it. Get him.
I'm not trying to get you, but I just want to see if I believe you or not. I mean, this is the other thing. When you get into a debate or a conversation like this, and you don't find yourself agreeing, what you should do is you should test out, and this is something I'm going to sound a little bit like Jordan Peterson because he says this, you should always assume the other person knows a little bit more than you do, possibly, and that they might be right, even though you find yourself disagreeing.
Well, I think if you said it like Jordan Peterson, it'd be right. Well, you find yourself disagreeing.
Right.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that.
That's fine. No, it's good. It's fine.
That.
No, don't cut it. We should be able to make fun of the guy. But here's the thing.
And that is voice.
But his voice, everyone does it. Actually, it's completely ineffectual because he does it himself. But in any case, okay, Mad Men. What was the other big one on HBO? The
Game of Thrones.
No, not the nerd one. The mafia one.
Oh, Sopranos.
Sopranos.
The advent of what is now called Prestige TV.
Yeah, Prestige, the golden era of TV.
Yeah, i.e., hey, we have 1,001 TV bloggers. We now need to justify 1,001 people writing about this stuff, and we of course have to be writing about something important. So we must be in the golden age of TV.
Yeah, the shows were better than I'd seen in a while. I hadn't seen a show like Mad Men before, although I stopped watching it after a while. I never did get into The Sopranos, but there was a whole just sort of Weeds and Dexter. These are all sort of that golden age TV.
Yeah, the leading edge, the mid-aughts leading edge.
And I would say that the nerdy stuff like Mr. Robot or Game of Thrones is still kind of in that area. It's still part of the golden age of TV trying to continue on. It's just a little different. It doesn't have that, you can watch Game of Thrones and not be a nerd.
Right. Well, I think that is the crossover point where I think it's the thing is I think at some point genre television became safe and acceptable and even respectable because the HBO model, which they figured out, they kind of worked out. I think they kind of tried it with Oz and it didn't really work out, but definitely with The Sopranos, at some point, you add a lot of sex and violence and titillation into it, and that helps you sell your show, whatever your show is about.
What do you think about Black Mirror?
I have seen half an episode.
Oh, what about you? Have you seen Black Mirror?
Yeah.
Do you think that's quality television?
I think it depends on the episode.
Yeah, me too. But I think it's overall, as a series, pretty quality episodes, most of them. But more than half are really good.
I think it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about in terms of how they're shot, they're consistently excellent. If you're talking about how they're acted, I have never had any complaints. If you're talking about stories, they're usually okay, and there's a couple stinkers. I think you can basically divide people into two categories, those who like the pig episode and those who don't.
And you don't.
I don't. I think it's
okay. That's the very first one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it almost turned me off the show completely. But what I would say, the really interesting question about Black Mirror and whether or not it's good or bad is how effectively does Black Mirror convey its message, its subtext, its arguments? And that's a really difficult question to answer that depends on the episode. And I think it's probably the most important one that nobody ever asks. Because these, and to make a reductive, simplistic statement, unfortunately, coming from my perspective as a writer, I believe that all stories are political and all entertainment is political. So,
me too.
When we have things like the sad puppies and #ComicsGate, what we're seeing is people just accepting the reality of things, and that there is not messages are never neutral. So, Black Mirror is making an argument, and Mad Men in particular made a really fascinating argument. I'm going to spoil the end of Mad Men, so
yeah.
If you don't want to
Spoiler alert! Spoilers ahoy!
Turn it off now. The
John Hamm wakes up in a bed next to Suzanne Plachette. It was really terrible.
Well, the ending,
not terrible. It was terrifying.
The ending of your story matters a lot, and the ending of Mad Men is that.
Sorry, inhaled some cider.
Don Draper does what he always does, which is he falls apart and runs away, but then he comes back to create the greatest ad of all time. That is an incredibly important thing to say. We have been following this person for 7 years. That's the end of the show. The last thing we see in the show is
the Coke ad.
The Coke ad, and that's celebratory. That's a happy thing.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love.
That's supposed to be successful,
okay.
According to Matthew Weiner, the argument that he's pretty clearly made in interviews is that it's good to do something well, and that is something that was done extremely well, and he's right. But one of the things that Mad Men was wrestling with in the show that I think got picked, that came and went, and I think this is one of the hazards of making something by committee, which is inevitably what TV does, is what is advertising doing to us? And if you look back, that question is not consistently addressed in Mad Men.
Can we just pause here on that commercial for a second and put Mad Men aside for a second?
Sure.
Now, I know I'm the oldest guy in the room. None of you guys are going to remember. I had the I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing album when I was 6, 7.
I don't remember the fact that it was actually an album. I remember. Yeah. I remember the latter versions of the adverts showing up on like Saturday morning cartoons. But
well, there was a version of the song that was "I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing," and there was no reference to Coca-Cola. But I do not know to this day whether the ad came first or the song came first, and I really don't. I tend to think that the ad came. The ad was such a hit that they took it and made it into an album and released it without the references to Coca-Cola to make money.
They wouldn't even need to remove the reference anymore.
Not now, but in 1970, whatever, they did.
Yeah, they forced Ray Davies to change the lyrics of his song. So yeah, it's going to happen to everybody.
But for me, that ad is like the epitome of how easy it is for, say, a political vision. In that case, it's the vision of an international people coming together as one
community
to be completely co-opted. I mean, it's disgusting, that ad. And yet it is, at the same time, always effective. Even now, to watch that ad, you cannot help but be moved by Coca-Cola. It's incredible. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, Don Draper succeeds in the end. And but it's a pessimistic message, isn't it?
I think that depends on who you talk to. And this is where we are now, which is that we are finally having these conversations. I mean,
right.
Star Wars is about a bunch of young, angry revolutionaries killing, countless people, that old Death Star joke. But, I mean, that's not necessarily a joke. I mean, these are all messages. And it came across pretty obviously in The Last Jedi, where there's a whole scene where they talk about war profiteers. And so, to a certain extent, the culture is becoming weaponized. And the fact that you have, for example, a female protagonist is no longer just a female protagonist. It's an argument about the way the world is and what you want to see.
It is now a political statement.
Yeah, but a very weak one.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, the fact that we shouldn't, just like the Coca-Cola ad with everyone on the mountain together being of all these different races was an argument, a political argument, it was also an ad for Coca-Cola. And, the Star Wars empire is a media empire. It's not just a bunch of stories now. And we have to take into account that each one of these movies is just shot through with, The Force Awakens, particularly, I thought, was just a product and nothing more. And worse than the prequels, because the prequels were really bad movies, this was not even a movie. It was just a product that worked well for a little while. Maybe I'm old and cynical, but it worked well while you were there. But if I thought about it, I was like, None of that added up to anything. It was one big advert for itself. It was weird. And the Last Jedi seemed a little better to me. A little bit, like the guy who did it knew what he was doing more, was less cynical maybe, I don't know.
Well, the way I would put it is the guy who made it had an argument.
Right.
He had a point to make.
Right.
And a point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I really liked Brick.
Brick was
It's
excellent.
amazing that the guy who made Brick made The Last Jedi.
He also did the Fly episode and Ozymandias of the prestige television show Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. If you asked me how my novel writing was going, I'd give you exactly that same answer. It's like, obviously, like, I am a publisher of books. I work, actually, if I would do this in honest order, I write copy for a legal tech company, then I'm a publisher of books, then I'm a podcaster, and then I'm a novelist. That would be the order. But anyway, so who are your favorite authors? I'm just giving you the come out of like, I didn't know I was sitting next to one of my competition here. So who are your favorite
Keeps
authors?
it interesting.
Murakami is pretty fantastic.
All right, we're done. Good.
Yeah. I'm very partial to early Bret Easton Ellison.
Yeah.
I have to say his latest work has left me pretty cold.
What separates early from mid or later?
Weirdly enough, he's gotten really into plot and genre, which I don't think has done him any favors. I thought Lunar Park was pretty much a disaster from...
I was going to say, is there like a particular year or release that you think is a dividing line of like going from worthwhile to like less than worthwhile?
I would say Glamorama.
Okay. I have not read it, but I haven't read any Ellis. I just want to make sure.
I haven't read any Ellis either. I should. I've read Murakami, of course, and Philip K. Dick.
Yeah.
Big writers for me.
Well, and similarly, I thought Polinick was pretty cool, but
yeah,
the issue with all three.
I read Fight Club, but didn't read much else.
That I saw Fight Club at the exact right time in theaters, and then went and read the book, and I was pretty much done for. But
yeah,
oh dear,
Polinick and Ellis, both in particular, I have issues with because for the same reason, which is that at some point I feel like they said everything they have to say, and they kept writing, and both of them...
They kept getting book deals. What do you expect?
I don't know, and I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation, but I do find that writers get to a point where they have made their important arguments, and then they are just telling stories, and I've never found that interesting.
Have you read Philip Roth?
I have not.
Okay.
He's one of those guys. He's like Woody Allen. I've never seen a Woody Allen movie, and there's just this huge block of material. And
how can that even be?
I figure I'm going to just commit and spend a bunch of time on it. Maybe not Woody Allen now, but...
I'm sorry. I know he's got all sorts of baggage, but you really have to watch Woody Allen. He's a major American filmmaker. It's just to the end. I mean, Louis C.K. is going to be remembered as one of the great American comics no matter what happens, and Woody Allen's going to be remembered as one of the great American filmmakers.
Roman Polanski is a great filmmaker.
Right, exactly. And we know for certain he's a rapist.
I don't think I'm going to... I don't think I would be willing to start any of his movies, but
Have you seen Chinatown? Have you seen?
Hell yeah,
yeah. Right.
We talked on an earlier episode where we were talking to Paul Guyan about this, about like I think Chinatown in particular, about is Chinatown a Polanski film or a Robert Towne or Robert Evans film? Because I think who had like kind of like more of a control. It's at some point, it's like a thing of what do you how do you since I guess individual moral purity as controlled through like what pop culture you consume is kind of like the defining feature. How what happens when you have an ensemble production of say 20 to 30 odd cast members, an entire cast and crew, and God knows how many important crew members. Like at what point, like how many of these people are can be reprobates and still be still find the work either acceptable, or at one point like how many how dominant does one person have to be before it just kind of scotches the entire work?
Well, I mean, if you want to go ultimate like hypotheticals, like if Hitler's paintings had been good and he had still been Hitler, would we hold on to his paintings? I mean, that's like the ultimate Godwin kind of,
Right.
version. It's hard to say. I don't think there's a connection between the moral character of the person, of the artist, and the quality of their work. It's a very tricky thing, though. I mean, because you want to think that someone who can create great art has some connection, maybe innately or on some level, to an understanding of what is good, and that means being moral on some level, or ethical.
I think I can make this a lot more of a difficult question. Jack, I think it's Posobiec. I'm not 100%.
Posobiec, yeah.
It turns
Prognosis.
out, yeah, he wrote a science fiction novel, and that seems to be something that a lot of the alt-right types have done. So, I mean, I think the really interesting question is, let's say it turns out that Richard Spencer has been working on a novel for the last 10 years, and he publishes it, and it is the best damn novel that anybody has read in years. It's just fantastic, compelling characters, surprising twists. Do you buy the book? Do you read the book?
Man, all you've done is take Hitler and put him now, right?
Well, and I think that's important, because I would not have problems appreciating a Hitler painting now, because that asshole's dead. He's not going to get anything out of it. Right. But if I buy Richard Spencer's book right now, it gets to enjoy very real material support from every single purchase of that book. I am contributing to him, and I'm contributing to the things he does.
Let's think about what the political consequences of Richard Spencer having a great book deal, and as a novelist, not as a
self-publicized, shut-in.
Not as as a political nonfiction writer, not as someone who's making a political argument, but as a novelist. What would the consequences be for him politically? Would that be beneficial to his white nationalist project, for him to be a best-selling novelist? I mean, it would be obviously just in terms of material wealth, but what would it do to him in the culture? How would it help him or hurt him in terms of political organizing?
I think if it's a genuinely good book, I think it helps him. And I think I can make this even more disturbing, which is, what if it's a really fantastically written book and it's also white nationalist? I mean, wow. people have always, I mean, don't dismiss that too quickly. I mean, a lot of people will say, as horrendous as a lot of its messages is, there's I'm forgetting the name of it's an old movie. It was described by one of our presidents as like history writ with lightning. It's the one about the Klan.
Birth of a Nation.
1915
seen by Woodrow Wilson, rumored, if not actual, Klan member.
I mean, we can't make the assumption that
have you
just
seen
because
Birth of a Nation?
I haven't. I've seen clips, in class.
I mean, all I know about it is that it was a big, epic film, and it was important in terms of filmmaking
at the time.
Well,
right? I don't know that it was good in terms of narrative, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it had characters, if it was really good, or if it was just an early film that was done on an epic scale and shot well.
I don't know. I would argue this is really dangerous ground. I mean, there's a guy who I've watched a few videos of on YouTube who is a genuinely fantastic filmmaker. His edits are good. His scene shifting is good. His juxtaposition of visuals and sound are just perfectly executed. And he is saying just absolutely disgusting things.
Is this mouthy Buddha?
Hey,
yeah.
You got it from the description alone. That dude knows how to make a goddamn movie.
My son showed me a video he did on race realism, and he's like, "This guy's dangerous." That's what he said to me. But you know what? His arguments are bad, and the writing, because his arguments are bad, is bad, in my opinion.
I would be. I mean, I think his arguments are presented in the right way. If you wanted to make that argument,
they're the best versions of those arguments.
They're the best, yeah. So I don't think it's that simple. So I mean, what do you do if you're in that situation? Because realistically speaking, I mean, for one thing, you've got a text that is saying something that is horrific in a very, in a very beautiful, well done way. You also have the issue of, realistically speaking, the money that comes from that book is probably going to be going toward his various projects in the political arena.
Right. So this is the important difference between rhetoric and philosophy. Mm-hmm. And from my perspective, it's like you can have a beautiful, compelling, moving argument that's entirely rhetorical, and if it's entirely rhetorical, it simply isn't to be believed. You have to have a solid argument. You have to have a justifiable argument. You have to have a well-reasoned argument, a consistent argument. And
well, I'm not saying that the book is going to turn out to be one weird trick to make, America white nationalist. What I'm saying is that it's just going to do a good job of doing that well.
So it's going to be
good art.
Aesthetically
yes.
pleasing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, obviously you do not want to shape your politics around
pure
your aesthetics, your political decisions on what is moving you aesthetically, which is the same thing really is saying you don't want to just react emotionally, you don't want to just react on a hot take, because aesthetics, they come to us they seem immediate. I don't think they are, but I think they seem immediate. So a great novel isn't just great formally, it isn't just pleasing, but it does have a line of rationality behind it. It does seem, I think it has to reach truth. And if it doesn't, on some level, the greater the novel, the more truth there is in it. Maybe this is naive. Is this naive? Am I being incredibly naive or Pollyanna here?
We're the wrong audience to ask.
So let me. Maybe it's helpful for me to rephrase this. Let's call it an almost great novel.
Okay.
But it's a novel that is the best version of that novel it could be.
Okay.
What do you do?
All right. Well, now the problem. Okay, you make a purely practical decision. You do not buy a book by an author when you know you're funding the Nazi Party. Mm-hmm. You just don't do that.
Yeah, I
agree.
could
go and check it out from the library, though.
Yeah.
But not too many of you. So, it's a real problem, right? But then you have to ask yourself...
Libraries, of course, pay for books, too, though.
Look, okay, I like a few reactionary authors. Yeah. And the older I get, the more reactionary I realize some of my favorite authors are. Like Philip K. Dick, I don't think is any kind of progressive at all.
I can't make heads or tails of that guy.
Yeah, but
if your politics are that the president is actually secretly the emperor of Rome, I think you've gone too many levels deep for me.
PKD, that changes on the era.
Yeah, it does. I think he's brilliant, and I think his work is great, even though he's not the greatest wordsmith at all. But because the fact that he isn't the greatest wordsmith at all means that what you have to deal with Philip K. Dick are his ideas.
Right. But I think, but even with him, it's he was one of the authors that kind of really, I don't know if he lived, the irony of Philip K. Dick's death is that he stopped taking his heart meds, or he was just not taking. It's like a thing like he was after a heavily drugged up life. Near the end of his life in the early 80s, it was almost like I'm keep remembering the thing I'm reading that was almost like he didn't do all the he either stopped taking his heart meds or he wasn't doing what he was prescribed to do. That's one of the reasons why he passed on early at the age of
51
or 52 before before Blade Runner was even released.
That date seems really young to me right now. It seemed pretty old when I was first reading him in 1992.
Yep, funny how that works out.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing was, but it was almost even Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is shot through with a and at one point I'm kind of wondering if had he lived long enough would he be considered like a trad Catholic or traditional Catholic, because he was always talking about like Caritas or
he was Episcopalian.
Okay, but he brought in, but there was a sense of like, I bring it back again to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, where the idea of empathy is a core theme, and the importance of empathy is a core thing that's shot. That's what the Voight-Kampff test is.
Right.
Is detecting empathy and empathetic to the point where, and it was one of the disappointing bits, even with Blade Runner 2049, which is a great film, it still doesn't bring in Mercerism.
Yep.
That's you. Yeah. Wondering why you're still podcasting this late.
Maybe. Let's see. But anyway, so this has been fun. But no, we can keep going too.
Okay, go. Yeah, I didn't know if you had a heart out or anything, but it's
no, I don't.
But I know that at least because he talks about how just core empathy for people is like some of the most important thing, and especially it's one of and empathy is like just shot through both like the source text for Blade Runner and the point where even like the original film and even like 2049 doesn't refer to to the belief system of Mercerism. Mercer-ism.
But does the original film? I don't think they're...
No, it doesn't. No, it's not at all. It's complete. It's completely carved out from even Blade Runner. The original has nothing to do with Mercerism or a lot of stuff. That's one of the amusing ironies of this Blade Runner 2049 is that I personally think that it actually addresses. There is more PKD stuff in the sequel than there ever was in the original film. Like in terms of like themes and ideas and concepts, and there's at least like it almost like it draws from like 8 different sub stories. But
so I want to just, what would you do? Would you buy the Spencer book?
Hell no.
Yeah, me neither.
I would write a really funny parody though.
Even if it was a great book? I mean, how can you write first of all, how can you write the parody if you haven't read it? How are you going to get a hold of it if you haven't bought it or checked it out of the library, which then supports him? I guess, now the internet, free.
That answers everything,
yeah,
yes. The internet will provide.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch a YouTube review of the book.
And then parody that.
Yeah, it's easy.
That's so lame, though. You can't really do anything about him if you just do this 2-level down thing. But, you have to engage. I mean, I think it would be worthwhile to read Spencer's book. I don't think he could write a great novel and have it be white nationalist. I really don't think you can write a great racist.
Well, if the Turner Diaries is any indication, that's definitely true.
There's a difference between being a high seller among the subculture versus a great novel.
Right? No, because you don't have any. Look, the premises are absurd for ethno-nationalism. So you're not going to write a compelling book where you're really pushing it. Just like you can't write a great Scientology novel. These books are okay. They're not great. L. Ron Hubbard.
Right. No, or it was about to say, or even a cinematic adaptation of such a Scientology novel. One thing I did want to get on tape is just your thoughts about. I think when we talked to Derick Varn a few months ago, he actually mentioned that I think Kill All Normies was like the highest zero bestseller. And I think just the question that I had was about Angela Nagle's book is get into just the just your thought about both how that particular book it somehow became a thing, but also so many people reacted who should have been into it almost reacted negatively against it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I was surprised. I mean, I wasn't entirely surprised, but I was surprised by the socialist.
Right. Oh, sorry. It's just to note that we can also connect this to her both covering and talking to Richard Spencer, and getting a shitload of just getting an absolute amount of shit just for the old thing of hey, if I deign to talk to you, I am thus therefore somehow acknowledging you as valid to exist. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Sorry,
right.
Go back to
okay, yeah. And I'm getting trouble for wanting to interview Jordan Peterson. That's similar. But I think that's separate from why the book itself got the reaction it did.
Okay.
Because I think they're different reactions. I think they're both wrong, but they're wrong for different reasons. So the reaction to Nagle really was weird because it got universal praise at first, really. But it got universal praise from the New York crew, basically Jacobin, Current Affairs.
She was on Chapo back in November before.
Anyway. Chapo, and the New Republic. People. This is a group of intellectuals on the left who know each other and who have a particular socialist perspective. Not necessarily. Okay, up until this point, I wouldn't have said they were the most radical, and I still don't think they are. But what I found what was very disappointing was that the sectarian left, and this is what I think of them as now, rather than as the Marxist left, the sectarian left was entirely unable to do anything with Nagle's book except denounce it.
Oh, so?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, there were a lot of bad reviews, and I don't just mean reviews that dissed her book, but the reviews that were based on misreadings and kind of hysterical reactions, and that were disjointed. Red Wedge, there was a review in Red Wedge, which is the kind of prototypical review from the socialist sectarian left or Marxist left.
Real quick, can you describe what you mean by distinguish between the sectarian left versus, say, the
socialist left?
Yeah, the Brooklyn socialist left.
The sectarian left comes out of actual Marxist groups that have existed in the United States for a while, like the ISO or
like leftover like 70s like Marxist Leninist stuff. Yeah,
Trot groups of various kind, but not just Trot. I mean, Leninist groups, the Marxist left that survived from the Cold War into now.
Okay, yeah.
They're not coming to socialism fresh. These are organizations that, I mean, look, the DSA is in a way a part of the sectarian left because it's been around for so long by that definition, but it's not part of the, doesn't in any way connect to the Russian Revolution, right?
Right. I say this is there's a DSA poster right there.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost the thing of like what the DSA was versus what it is. From like 6,000 members forever, now 32,000 plus. Anyway, go on.
Right. I mean, when I was, here's how I think about it. Now Varn would be the guy who really could really explain this because he knows the history of all these little groups better.
Right. He was the one who recommended that we read certain things about the history, yes.
But the way I think of it is the groups that sell newspapers and those that don't. And the groups that sell newspapers, they have claims to, they're usually more tied to the Russian Revolution and their outlook, or to the Maoist Revolution, and that they've been around for a long time, and that their membership is often older, although not always. Sometimes there are new little groups that pop up, like the Communist League of Tampa, that are like new versions of old sectarian groups. But what I found is that when you try to be actually thoroughly revolutionary Marxist, the reaction to Angela Nagle's book was very bad. And it really actually troubles me that the so-called revolutionaries couldn't take on that message. And instead were very much wed to the idea that you basically don't ever criticize anything that's said in defense of any person of color. It doesn't matter, or not any person, like a given person, but like anything that's said in the name of people of color, you simply do not criticize. It doesn't matter what it is that's being said. So, for instance, you don't criticize call-out culture based on Twitter and Tumblr because, that's about race, and we are always on the right side of that issue. It's just, I don't, and I think I've tried to think about why is this the case. Why is the radical revolutionary socialist left so completely unable to be coherent about this? And I think it's because they're really desperately looking for a radical subject, for a revolutionary subject. They need a group that will not only be willing to go to war and overthrow the current system, but will know what to do after. So, and they don't know what to do after. So they're looking for a kind of a mystical subject, and they've found it in whoever is basically the most oppressed in the moment, and it really shifts around, but basically in the oppressed. That's my thought on it.
Like impulses or tendencies that have kind of almost like just hung around since like the early 70s, or.
Yeah, I mean earlier than that sometimes, but yeah, I mean I just think that the groups have long histories. They've obviously changed and split and split and split, but I think like I was involved in one of these organizations, and I won't say who they were, but I think that there was a sense that they were very good at criticizing the Democratic Party. They were very good at, I don't know about that, but they were very good at criticizing certain kinds of economic liberal critiques of capitalism.
Okay.
But when it came to organizing a revolution or reaching out to people or trying to bring people together to do political change, they had really static ideas, and they basically had a lot of magical thinking. It was just, we're gonna put out these critiques, and eventually the revolutionary class, whatever that would be, is going to find them, and when they need them, they'll use them. That was it.
And
so you certainly don't critique those people, whoever they happen to be. We don't really know who they are, but whoever they happen to be.
But isn't critiquing call-out culture, in a sense, a call-out of its own?
No, because it's not aimed at any individual.
That was a bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
We do occasionally enjoy the ironic bit here, yeah.
I mean, look, it's not a very deep critique, and there's a whole industry which will pay you at least something to just continually make it, and this is something that I really am try to resist because it gets a little more clicks when you do say the same thing about call-out culture being bad. You know, if you say call-out culture is bad, people will click on that, especially if you say it in certain ways. But yeah, it's not a very deep critique. It's something we should be able to take on. It's like, these tactics aren't working, folks. Trying to shut down every right-winger who comes to a college campus is backfiring on us. We are not coming off well right now. And we should be absolutely, look, Hillary Clinton shouldn't have lost that election, and we should absolutely be where it's at in terms of coolness right now. We've got this 75-year-old senile buffoon in the Oval Office, and he still manages. I mean, he's got a horribly low approval rating, but the people around him still manage to sometimes make us look foolish. It's ridiculous. We should be wiping the floor with these people, and we're not. So something's wrong with us. We need to look at what's wrong.
Well, I mean, I think there's a distinction to be made there, though. I mean, I guess I'm not clear on the connection between these sectarian left and the larger left as a whole.
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, to be honest, can you name a sectarian left publication? Because I don't think I've even heard of them.
Give me 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, no, that was. Damn it!
I know it's a rhetorical thing.
Now I'm going to get an answer.
No, I can name some. I mean, I sent them copies of Angela Nagle's book.
Let me reframe it. Can you name one that I would necessarily know? I mean,
no.
As what I would describe as a
no.
Casual...
You know what? I may be talking about something that doesn't matter, but it mattered to me as a Marxist because I wanted to see people who are on the socialist left and part of these little sectarian groups. I mean, this isn't even like Socialist Action has a newspaper. The ISO has a newspaper. You know, the Spartacus League. There are a variety of different periodicals, and these, Red Wedge would be one. Counterpunch isn't sectarian, but it bashed Angela Nagle's book. But
okay, I'm familiar with Counterpunch. At least.
So
and I, as far as matters, I would make a distinction. A good argument is a good argument, no matter where it comes from.
Right.
And that's something that drives me nuts about a lot of the discourse online now, which is, shut up, you don't have as many followers on Twitter as I do, so your argument is invalid. Like horrible. That really, really, really bothers me.
Yeah, it's really dumb. But no, I was disappointed by the actual Marxist left's reaction. And when I say actually, that's just this side of really existing. It doesn't mean that they were good Marxists. It just means that they have organizations. But it was troubling to me that was a reaction. And it would be less troubling to me if there were any of them were any good. But none of them were. There's some serious criticism of Nagle's book. No one made them. The criticism is like, she doesn't even talk about the economic crisis in the book. It is of what it is critiquing in some ways because it focuses on online culture. So it only goes so far. It's not going to really. I mean, in the end, it's basically an endorsement of Corbyn or Bernie Sanders, and that may not be good enough. But
it's a start.
It's something.
That does remind me a related question I did have back to Zero Books businesses. Just because I'm personally curious, what the hell do y'all do for editing?
Yeah, well, okay. We have editors who work for JHP who edit all the books.
Because I was I remember reading
that book,
through there's a couple other Zero books that I went through with I just said, okay, hell with this. I have my red pencil, and I'm gonna just start just.
It wasn't just Nagle's book.
Oh no! Oh hell no! This is other books that were published in 2015. I just started just copy editing with my red pencil.
The classic book, Capitalist Realism, is riddled with errors.
Right. This I own it on an ebook, so I wasn't able to write on that. But.
Yeah. We have and look, I would go back and I would have these things re-edited, but it costs money, and so and I'm not actually in charge. I'm a freelance editor, so I don't have a contract I get paid month to month to be the freelance editor or freelance publisher.
I was going to say, how does one be a freelance publisher?
Well, I decide what books get published. I do the publicity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Oh.
That's my job. I'm not, but I can't make big decisions about how we spend the money. I'm always under the, I'm always told how to spend the money by John Hunt. Now, but I always make choices too as to like what I ask for. Like if I made a big stink about copy editing these books correctly, I could probably get it done right now because I'm pretty well liked. I do want to hire another copy editor for Zero Books, but it isn't the most important thing for what Zero Books is doing. It is important. It'd be nice for it to be better. It'd be nice for it to be perfect, but no books are ever perfect. But it'd be nice for it to be good, really solid. And it's about, I'd say it's really sketchy, but it's always been that way because it's really a seat of your pants kind of operation.
What do you think would be the most important thing for Zero Books to acquire or add right now?
The most important thing for Zero Books to do right now is not be led by Nagle success. That means to find the next step rather than to start down this road. Look, Nagle isn't being led by Nagle. She's going somewhere else next, right? She's not rewriting Kill All Normies.
Good,
we don't need to publish Kill All Normies again.
Yeah, so she's mentioned that she's anyway, sorry.
So that's the most important thing, is what we shouldn't do. We shouldn't just start, we could easily turn into what people say we are, which is like the Dave Rubin of the Marxist left or something. We do not want that. So that's the first thing.
Whoa, that is harsh.
Very harsh. But some of my worst critics have said that kind of shit.
Dear Jesus.
Whoa.
Like, basically, anytime you criticize call-out culture, you're going to be compared to people in the anti-social justice warrior industry. That's it. And I understandably so, because, the algorithm will link you, to some degree. But no, that's total crap. Just that accusation. But it's not also what we want to avoid doing. And we've received submissions that I would say completely fit. I had I won't go into that. But yeah, I had some books that and then there were certainly lots of books that we just completely rejected because they were trying to be part of that anti-social justice warrior industry, and that's not what we're interested in doing. The other thing that I think is really important is to try to bring some sort of materialist analysis of the present moment into print, and to rethink the connection between the superstructure and the base is kind of what I'm thinking about right now. But I did a podcast with Varn about that. It's something I'd like to have books come out about, but it's a very abstract way of saying it.
Just out of curiosity, did you hear what you would consider to be any, I'm not even going to say correct, but thoughtful or interesting critiques, or even...
The one from Counterpunch wasn't horrible, because it was actually about... It wasn't saying she's a transphobe or she's this or that. It was saying, oh, she missed this part of American history. She's Irish and she missed this, this, and this.
Well, I was actually going to ask about engagement from the right.
Oh, from the right. Oh.
Or was it just kind of almost like near universal rejection, or did like some of the paleo?
No, the problem was we got good reviews from some of the right. That was one of the big problems. Like National Review gave us a good review.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I can remember. Yeah. So at some point, it's almost like, did they sincerely?
That's not like the far right. That's not the alt right, but that's the right. That's conservative.
Yeah, that's the never Trump or neocon. Yeah,
the never Trump or neocon.
But did they necessarily have anything interesting to say about the book?
Just that it wasn't a total blanket condemnation was kind of, I think, used as a slam against the book. Wait a minute, how can you be a proper book if these assholes like you or didn't hate you loudly enough?
I don't remember, but they really praised the book, and so what I remember from that was they praised the book, and that was the most important thing. Reading it, they didn't have anything to add to the book except one of the things I thought were true about it. They didn't they didn't say things that I thought were not true about it, but were also praised. That was weird because I didn't find myself hating anything they said about in the National Review. They had this, look, I kind of have this sort of classical liberal streak in me. In other words, I think free speech is very important. I don't believe in the markets, as the greatest mediator of speech. I don't believe in property rights as the foundation of society, but I do believe that free speech is a paramount value, and that's all they were really talking about is the need for debate. And I mean, I don't remember every line of that review. There were some big reviews. You know what the one review I remember from the alt-right was? It was about the copy editing. It was about, hey, this is how decadent the left is.
Oh dear! If that's, I was like, shit. If that's somehow, God, if that's their foothold,
that was their foothold.
It's like I always say, the left and the right are much more similar than we think.
Yeah. So both pedants, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I'm trained as an engineer, but even in for the brief few years that I was an alt weekly rock crit, I learned just a couple things and trying to be better. And at some point, it's like, no, I'm the son of 2 English teachers, and I have to anyway.
Right. I mean, look, there was the copy editing problems, but the other thing they would say is like, oh, and it isn't, equal to Shakespeare or something like that. I mean, it's not the standards of writing in the modern society.
That's fair. It wasn't Shakespeare.
That's right. It's true, but the point is,
they were right. It was not Shakespeare.
In other words, this nostalgic looking back on a time when the literary was more supposedly complex and these kinds of things wouldn't gone through. And it's true that when you spent more money when printing books cost a lot of money, things like copy editing wouldn't be a competitive expense, and you would make damn sure that if you're going to spend that much money, every single word was right. Whereas now, where you're doing small print runs, and the copy editing is more expensive than the print run.
Yeah, print on demand.
Yeah, then you are going to skimp on the copy editing, and you're going to spend just as much as you need to get the copies out that can sell. And in the case of Nagle, it was quite a lot. Now, right now, if you bought a copy of Angela Nagle's book, Kill All Normies, it would not be riddled with copy editing problems, because we've gone through several iterations and reprints of that book. So it's been copy edited and copy edited and copy edited, and then sent to a German publisher, translator, and copy edited again, because they were saying, hey, you missed this and this and this.
Yeah, that seems like such a sad argument to hear from them, because if I had to guess, the last book that they probably read was Shogun, so...
Yeah.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're an esoteric podcast. No matter what you think we hear in about whatever the 30-odd episodes of whatever bullshit we've talked about, did you expect to hear about James Clavell's... What, 1980? What the hell did that come out?
I was going to say, wasn't that a miniseries?
Yeah, no, that was. Yeah, it was a mini. It's a dad book. My dad. It's a boomer,
your dad's book.
Yeah, it's a boomer dad book. Like even the paperback is like this, like James Michener 2-inch thick thing. Yeah, it was a miniseries with I believe like Richard Chamberlain in like 1980 something. And
this is Shogun, the staggering saga of feudal Japan, the story of ruling warlords battling for ultimate supremacy. They are challenged by a stranger from across the seas, John Blackthorne, the one man with the power to change Japan's destiny for all time. This is the opening chapter of the 6-part presentation starring Richard Chamberlain and Toshiro Mifune, the epic tale of power and passion, beauty and tragedy. That is Shogun.
Yeah. No, the thing is, the guy who said this was, I know who it was. He's a YouTube kind of minor YouTube celebrity. There's one bit where he said like Trump is going to raise Atlantis from the bottom of the sea. Trump is going to reach complete the Hegelian dialectic. Trump is going to bring the aliens back to Earth, and I don't believe in democracy. I believe in the Hegelian dialectic. This is I forget the guy's name, but he was like at a protest or something.
That guy's name was Ben Garrison. Yeah.
I don't know, but he's got a minor Twitter following, and he's big into being a scholar of philology. I mean, he's like big into understanding the history of Western culture and having read a lot, basically, and being a reactionary prick and virgin. Yeah. Those are the things that he's big into.
Those are popular topics.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to move on into what you could call the lightning round episode segment. Let's start off with can you give us what, let's say what comes to mind, or tell us a story or whatever. What do you think when I ask you about what was Left Forum like?
Oh, the Left Forum, I've been there, I think 3 times, and the last time I was there, I was really made aware of the fact that I was too old to be cool with the New York crowd. And so that's what I think of Left Forum when I think of it first. But the second thing I think about it is seeing people like David Harvey for the first time, like in person, and Christopher Hedges, and Sam Cedar, and just being in New York also. It's exciting. So the Left Forum is an incredibly cool place to be because you get to see all these left-wing people, and even if you disagree with them completely, you get to meet them.
You're just in the room with them, yeah.
Yeah, and also it's in New York City, which I've now come to really... I mean, I kind of always wanted to live in New York and never have, but I've come to enjoy going to Left Forum just to be in New York City.
That's that's what for many, well, for a handful of years, that's what CMJ was like for me as a college radio guy. Because the CMJ Music Fest was always that weekend in September, October, where a handful of people from the radio station we would either fly or like caravan out to, and we would be in southeastern. We'd be in parts of Manhattan for a weekend and do like college radio nerd indie rock shit.
No, New York's fun.
On a very related note to the Left Forum, how were the Posadists to talk to?
Oh well, he's great. Eugene is the guy's name. I forget his last name, or I can't pronounce it. One of those two. Those often go together.
And for anybody in the audience who don't know what the Posadists are, we'll link to it in the show notes.
Well,
you are. What is your title?
My cadre name is Comrade Communicator of the Intergalactic Workers League, Posadists.
Okay. And when did you join the party?
Well, I joined the party a couple of years ago when I met Comrade High Commander on Brighton Beach, and that is where the party generally meets, by the water. The water is very important to Posadists.
I think that Eugene of the Posadist organization has a real problem because there's been actual disclosure. So this is a problem.
Wow.
Yeah. He said that the only reason Trump won was because the government wanted to make sure that there would be no disclosure, and Podesta had promised some releases of the information on UFOs. So this was a strike against the true revolution from the Space Brothers, because this is a way to hold back disclosure of the UFO contact that had been happening for years and years and years, and the Comrade Commander was going to expose to the world eventually.
How did you discover this meeting was taking place?
I was just going to the beach, and there I saw these strange people, led by this weird little shirtless Russian guy who looked like a cross between Bordiga, Brother Theodore, and Nikita Khrushchev.
Okay, and you saw this and you thought this about him right away, and then what did he say to you, or how did he get you involved with what was happening?
Well, I just watched him for a while. I listened to him, and then I had some conversations with him, and it became very clear to me that a lot of questions I've had about the left and about the potential of revolution, that he had some very good answers to this. That we're all waiting for something. We're all waiting for something more or less horrible to happen. That's entirely disconnected from our revolutionary activity, or what we call our revolutionary activity. Most of our work is busy work, but we're waiting for environmental collapse. We're waiting for things to get better before they get worse, or get worse before they get better. But what we're really waiting for is a goddamned alien invasion.
Okay.
Do they actually use the phrase Space Brothers?
I'm not sure they do. But they might as well. Why not?
I'm just curious because it's a particular term of art in ufology. So
right, the Space Brothers. I know, right? The Space Brothers are the Nordic types.
Right.
Yeah. They don't use that term. They just use the comrades.
I was just curious.
Well, see, Space Brothers does sound like either like a funk act or an EDM production pair.
There's the Greys, and there's the Space Brothers, and then there's the reptiles, and what else?
Reptilians,
and but anyway, yeah. The Posadists are not. They don't distinguish between the aliens by race. They're welcoming of all of our comrades from outer space, and they want full disclosure of every great socialist species that has visited the planet.
That's what I want. I'm a Posadist now.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So that's
you should
what they're about.
You should really. I'll put a link in the notes. You should listen to the Zero Squared Visits the Left Forum episode. It's something.
Yeah, it's fun. And Sonia, but there's been real disclosure. You know, the New York Times actually came out and said, yeah, there's a space there's a UFO program that's been receiving funds.
The Harry Reid thing from alien alloys from over Christmas.
Yeah, there's supposed to be some stuff they don't know what it is in a hangar of a billionaire who has like a gray alien on all of his warehouses. A little painted gray alien.
I know, because he's that much of an Alienware fan.
It's crazy. So yeah, it's like $22 million from the government. So it's enough to it's not enough to make a movie, but it's enough to find out whether or not aliens have visited Earth. So I want to talk to Eugene again for my podcast and not drink beer and be very serious about the disclosure movement.
Can I come?
Yeah, sure.
I'm actually a huge UFO nerd. Are you talking about Robert Bigelow as the billionaire?
Yeah, Bigelow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a UFO nerd too. One of my
really? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense being a sci-fi.
Yeah. I wrote a book called After the Saucers Landed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did a lot of research for that, and also I was completely nuts in the '90s. Took LSD and thought they were going to come any day. Anyway, so
did you think they were leftists?
No. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did really. I mean, I didn't write it down or consciously think so, but diet soap was originally when I sent out the listing to Fact Sheet 5, I listed it as a UFO anarchy magazine.
Whoa!
Yeah, so
did you guys ever caravan down to the show in McMinnville?
No. Unless you're talking about the Shakespeare Festival or something.
No. Shakespeare Festival. Yes, I was to say McMinnville is the other one.
I know McMinnville, right? I used to go to both places when I was canvassing for Osberg in the '90s. But anyway,
okay, two more topics.
Okay,
we did that one.
I feel like I'm under interrogation, but on a truth serum.
Here's one. Can you talk about what was it like to? You'll get a kick out of this, maybe. What was it like to have Zizek on your show?
Hi, it's me here.
Hello, Slavoj.
Okay, wait a minute. I will just try to make the voice so that I hear you, okay?
Do you hear me all right?
Do you hear me all right?
Oh, you sound great.
I was nervous. I mean, I was a big fan of Zizek. And it was also kind of a dream come true because I got to confront him on just a couple of points that I didn't agree with him about.
Was this face-to-face or only over the phone?
It's over Skype.
Okay.
So, I don't know if he even would remember me now.
I doubt it highly. He
does tons of stuff, but it was a big deal for me. And so I really liked him. As guests go on the podcast, he was amongst the better guests. I would ask him back for sure.
Okay. No, I don't sound great. I sound, we in Slovenia, we have a wonderful vulgar phrase. When somebody looks or sounds bad, no?
Uh-huh.
You say, you look as if somebody just pulled you out of a cow's ass, That's how I feel now.
And not,
certainly, yeah.
Not just because I was already a fan, but when I was talking to him, it was exactly the way you would expect talking to Zizek would be. And so
the truth meets the legend, yeah.
Yeah. So he was not anything that I wasn't expecting, and we had a really nice conversation, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. In the end, he didn't answer my questions any better than I might have thought he could. But there are some points on labor theory of value that were important to me, and as if you're a Marxist, they should be important. And he didn't really pick them up that well.
And for a Marxist, you have to believe in the labor theory of value, that's true. So I want to ask you, do you hold with Marx's labor theory of value, Christian?
It's all the problem, and there is a great debate. Moshe Poston did some contributions in the U.S., some new German Marxist economists did it. You know who even avoided this question. My good friend David Harvey. I had a debate with him at Berger College, and I asked him, okay, labor theory of value, yes or no? And he squeezed out,
Right.
I think it can be saved, but we have to totally desubstantialize it. Harvey knows this, German New Marxist knows it, It has to be desubstantialized in the sense that it's not literally that my work individually gives something to a commodity that I'm producing. Commodities have value only as commodities within the exchange and so on. And Marx is very clear here, although he is not properly read. Second thing to do, where we have to elaborate further labor theory of value, is that Marx was too fast in linking it to a certain temporality. You must know, if you are a Marxist, this notion of how complex labor can be reduced to simple labor, which can be measured by temporality. That I find a little bit problematic.
I would say, of my guests, Zizek has been was the most exciting before it happened. Moise Pistone is one of the ones who I'm most interested in now. I like him as a Marxist much more than I like Zizek as a Marxist. I think Zizek is a fun intellectual, and I like Zizek quite a lot as a person.
As a
but
character.
I would say Moise Pistone is the more serious Marxist.
Last topic on my list of dashed off topics is you talk about previous guest stuff. Can you talk about like arguing with Derick Varn online / on the show?
It's been a while since we've argued really passionately. In the last few times that we argued online, he got really mad at me because I would push back, and I would just go, okay, fine. If you're done, just don't tell anyone any of the secret things I told you. but I mean, it's like he's very heated guy, and I'm not exactly not cranky.
When you start to try to be political and you're trying to win people to your point of view, there are sacrifices you make that aren't just about your personal morality. It also, you make some sacrifices as to what you think the scope of your political vision could be. And, I feel as though it's absolutely an imperative to reach out to people and to communicate with people who aren't exactly like you and have a different identity or different set of moral signals or symbols. But I also worry that we're going to fall into electoralism.
Well, we already have. We already have. And here's the thing. If we are honest about our politics, and let's be fair, I don't think most people are honest. There is no way for you to operate in our current world without some concessions to electoralism, even to create the space for more revolutionary things to happen. Because what do we see happening to groups that don't engage in any electoralism?
They become sects. They become cults.
They become cults. They feed themselves. They don't do anything outside of it. They denounce people outside of themselves. And a lot of times, even, let's be honest from our experience, and we're not going to name names here, they actually actively support the status quo.
That has happened, yeah.
And so we will fight occasionally, but it's been less bad since I started working in Zero. And he's not because he's working for me exactly, but maybe just because there's less to prove between the two of us. I don't know. But yeah, that's a rocky relationship. I've never met him. I've never met him in person.
Wow.
I've known him a long time. We've done tons of podcasts together. I've never met him in person.
Salt Lake's only 18 hours that way. But anyway.
Well, but he's only been there for a little while.
That's true.
He's in Cairo and Korea.
That's true, yeah.
Mexico.
I will say, we really enjoyed his, when Jacob and I talked to him back in October, it was, we enjoyed it, and I think the episode that we recorded with him is either our most listened to or second most listened to episode I ever recorded, second only to an episode we recorded on the history of Go.
I'm not going to say it's the title, but it's the title.
Well, now you made me really uncomfortable because if this podcast doesn't outperform Varn's, now there's another reason why he's going to feel smug and superior.
It's amazing how politics always winds up being personal.
Yeah, that's.
I quite like him actually, but we've never met. We should meet. We're going to meet soon because he's going to be coming out here to record a podcast with Thaddeus Russell.
Well, shit. Well, let us know when he gets out here. We
can
have
all
him in
get
here.
together, yeah.
Like, hang out in our Christmas lighted scenic basement apartment studio. I think last but not least, I'll ask you a similar question to what we asked him. Do you have any, say off the top of your head, how about any reading selections, either of stuff that you think that like recently activated leftists should check out, or stuff from either your own personal catalog or the Zero catalog, or Zero Haymarket or Verso catalog you think folks should check out?
I have a follow up.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to say you should read The Writing on the Wall by Anselm Jappe. You should read Angela Nagle's book if you haven't. It's worthwhile, and you should read Capital, Volume 1 at least. But yeah, and then you should read Bash Bash Revolution. There, I plugged all the things I have to plug by just contract.
Bash Bash Revolution is, of course, your own book, right?
No, it's a novel. It's coming out in March.
Okay,
Yeah, it's my
March.
novel.
Okay.
I don't read books.
Yeah.
What YouTube videos would you recommend to me?
Oh, YouTube videos. You should check out the Zero Books YouTube channel first.
Okay. We will link to that. Yeah.
And then let's see. Let me think about this. Who's really good on YouTube? Well, I like the Supreme Deluxe. Is that the name of it?
Vic Berger.
Yeah, Vic Berger.
Vic
I love
Berger
Vic Berger. You should definitely check out.
He
Vic
works
Berger.
for Super Docs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like ContraPoints because I think Nagle does a lot of good stuff, or at least is getting there.
I like ContraPoints, and I really like the fact that ContraPoints debates the right.
Mm-hmm.
That is a controversial opinion.
Yeah, ContraPoints did one on free speech. Made one video on free speech that there was a couple things I didn't like about it. The primary thing I didn't like about it was that it got taken down. It was flagged by these alt-right scumbags like as being controversial content and got taken down. Completely incorrect. It's for no reason at all.
Yeah.
It was just an attack. It was like doxing. It was just crap. That was one thing I didn't like about it. But also, I didn't think the arguments were good. There were some major flaws. Like there was some shifting of goalposts, and there were some major flaws. And so the other reason I didn't like it was taken down is because I left a comment trying to argue with that.
Right.
But I like ContraPoints overall. But that wouldn't be one of the first ones I'd recommend. YouTube is, I guess it would be, because on the left, what is there? What is there on YouTube?
There's, you
H Bomber guy has been doing stuff. He's actually a video game guy who's kind of made the switch.
There's this guy named Muke.
Not familiar.
Yeah, he just does vlogging. That he is. The reason I know who he is because he has like 1,000 more viewers than the Zero Books channel does, and he's just some college kid vlogging.
His name is Muke?
I think so. Muke.
There's ContraPoints. There's ShaunJen.
Yeah,
ShaunJen is fascinating because he's the most boring delivery. He's just like, "Hello, everyone."
Hello, everyone, and somewhat belatedly, happy 2018. Today's video is going to be something of a personal one. A little bit of me talking about myself, a little housekeeping, and a minor mission statement going forward in the next year.
Yeah,
and it's usually just like one static picture, and yet he's got at least, I think he's close to the 100K number. I think he's like at 75 or something. He's getting up there.
Yeah, well, I think the cool thing about Shaun, I think at this point, I think Jen just like cuts the videos together. I think it's like Shaun, but it's like he does a lot of response videos, response arguments to a lot of like just like dumb right wing video posts. But like watching a couple, in fact, he put out I think it was like his first video of 2018, actually talking about both the need for also the open space forest. Like, yeah, if you want to do like lefty YouTube vids, now is the time, because it's like a lot of like really like hard left people have been we've been on podcasts, but now we need to like move into YouTube too, because YouTube happens to be this, and I learned this in a podcast meetup last year. YouTube is now the second biggest search engine on the planet.
After Google.
Because and who
And
owns
it's owned by
YouTube?
Google, yeah.
Yes, that's why. That's one of the reasons why, you know, for this show, I got an account just to take the audio from our shows and like stick it on YouTube, and one day I'll figure out what the hell to do for a visual component.
Yeah, I put all the podcasts on YouTube, and they do, you know, hundreds of listens. Here's some ones that are on my. This is what I subscribe to: Philosophy Overdose, The Majority Report with Sam Sater, my own channel, the
Right.
Zero Books channel, The Strand Bookstore, Reason TV. Okay, I'm not saying I agree with them.
Radley Balko is actually one of my favorite writers, and he's a libertarian who used to do work for them.
Yeah. They're not horrible. Red Letter.
Libertarians are usually right about at least one thing.
Yeah. Red Letter Media.
Hell yeah.
Lefty Poll, which is sort of, you know, that's questionable. But
I think it was like all like ex-Redditors or
Lefty Poll is
8chan, isn't it?
8chan.
Okay.
Like anti-poll, but still Chan.
Edgy.
Yeah, edgy. Sometimes, you know, probably walking right over the lines into crap. But you know, I talked to one of them on the podcast and made a little video, like I'll answer anything, kind of like video response to a bunch of questions.
I think you posted a video that was just you playing video games and like responding to popular questions.
Played the old Punch Out and
oh dear,
responded to questions. Why is oh dear to the Punch Out?
No, just because of playing Punch Out is timed for a CRT refreshing at 30 frames a second, and if you play it on anything other than that, the timing gets off, according to certain members of Giant Bomb.
So those are the things I subscribe to that have updated recently. But Philosophy Overdrive is, Philosophy Overdose. Oh, and Blogging Heads TV.
Let me be very clear. I am not sharing my YouTube subscriptions. That's not happening.
Wuss.
Well, that's what I skipped a couple. Like, I didn't tell you that I subscribed to Truth Bombs by Ben Shapiro just to see the hell he's saying.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I guess I just did.
Yeah, the other guy I would mention, actually, and he's kind of a weird one, is there's this guy on Twitch named Destiny, and his real name is Stephen Bunnell, and he's made a really weird sort of side gig for himself, basically doing debates with people. He actually blew up because he did a debate about immigration and some alt-right topics with another video game guy, and just sort of spun out of that. And he's very much an edgy dude who came out of the gaming community and, you know, used to call people the N-word ironically and stuff like that. But he's also made a pretty dramatic shift socially to the left. And I find him interesting because he's the one guy I've seen who's basically extremely willing to have conversations with people who are pretty far in the other direction and usually hold his own pretty well. I mean, he's done debates where he's been on the line with, you know, 3 people and is happy to just throw back. And he's, you know, he's definitely... He's doing that thing where, you know, he's willing to have the debate and he's actually willing to fight and, in my opinion, willing to win, which is something that I don't see some people on the left doing. At the same,
Are they not willing to fight or not willing to win?
I would say both, actually. I mean, there's a lot of people who get into these debates and they're just completely unprepared for them. Like, they're not willing to do the research, they're not willing to engage, they're not willing to, you know, be very careful to make sure that... I mean, like, there was that thing with Jordan Peterson where he got interviewed, and there's also things like...
mentioned earlier in this very recording.
Yeah. Sure. And there's been a couple of cases where, you know, somebody will come up and, you know, prepare to, you know, defeat them with logic, and it turns out that they're just not prepared to have the discussion. And Destiny comes prepared.
Yeah.
At the moment, though, I have to say he's in the middle of an extremely ugly, basically, catfight with people over things that have nothing to do with politics. Is basically just the argument. The arguments got personal, and I think he's actually suspended from Twitter right now.
Oh boy!
Oh wow!
Which is something I really find sort of disturbing about this, which is that it does seem like that almost inevitably happens when you're discussing these subjects in the online world.
That'll happen. All right, and I think that's.
Are we done?
We are coming to any final words from the assembled crowd this evening, and or where? And do you have anything to plug? And or where can we find you? How about that?
Well, okay, so DouglasLain.net is my own personal website. Zero-books.net is the Zero Books website. You can go to Google and type in Zero Books, and you'll find our website. You can type in Douglas Lain, Lain. You'll find me. If you go to Zero Books, go to Google, I've definitely been drinking, and you type in boobs. No, never mind. That's the point is...
you don't type in boobs.
And then you turn the calculator upside down, it's 8008. Anyway, so the point is, I'm out there. Just Google me, and you can find the podcast, you can find the YouTube videos, you can find books. And if you find me on Facebook, be nice, because I get a lot of heat there.
Awesome. You can reach the show, us, at givingthemic. Actually, no, we don't even have a .com. SoundCloud.com/givingthemic. Find us on Facebook at just Facebook.com/givingthemic. Twitter is at givingthemic. Shockingly, like, share, and subscribe. Be good to each other. Pet random animals you find in the street, and Jacob.
I am actually on Twitch now. You can search for me by just looking for Jacob Mercy, one word. If you want to have a political debate, come on, let's do this. Let's see what you got. Any topic. I'll take either side. I don't even care. And I also just released a short Twine video game on my website, which I would strongly recommend everyone check out. It's called Barkles: the Game: Game of the Year edition, and it is available at barkles.dog/game, and it's free, so that's always nice.
Then there you go. All right, on behalf of everyone assembled here on our lovely rainy Monday night, thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. No idea how the hell I'm going to edit all this down, but we'll see what happens.
It was fun.
The Posadists are right.
You say that now. All right, and good night.
Just don't make me sound as stupid as I actually was, and we'll be fine.
Well, it's a possibility I face every episode.